Hello and welcome to Arttox, the podcast that challenges perceptions, breaks down barriers, and makes art accessible for everyone. I'm your host, Shahina Jaffa, artist, TEDx speaker, and advocate. Welcome back to Arttox, the podcast where we dive deep into the stories behind the art that moves us. This is part 2 of our 2-part special, PDA, Public Display of Art, a celebration of creativity that leaps from streets to stages. Last month we met 2 incredible artists breaking boundaries in public art, Shauna, a muralist, and Aurélie, a live painter. In this episode we revisit those powerful conversations and are also joined by Marco Robinson, co-author and producer of Start Over book series, a collection of real-life stories about overcoming adversity and choosing transformation. I'm thrilled to share that I'm become a co-author. My chapter, Seasons of Becoming, is a result of reflecting on many chapters of my life, so I could share one with you. How art has helped me navigate difficulty and grow into the person I am today. As Aurélie once said, art is the bridge between what we feel and what we can share. So plug in, turn up the volume, and join us. So you didn't play football. Did you line dance or do you play the fiddle?
Okay, so I attempted all 3 of them, but I was bad at all of them. I was okay at Cayley, like Irish dancing, but not good enough to make it into like the older classes. And I tried so hard to play football, like I really did for years and years, but I just was not made for it. And we call it GAA or GA. But like I come from big GA family, and I just was bad.
It wasn't your path, was it? But well done for trying.
Yeah, it's the moment when you stop battling what it is that you think that you're supposed to be and just you go, oh, it's this is easy. And I guess I just grew up very artistic. At that stage, we all went to the same youth club from all across the county. All of the weird misfits went to this youth club, and it was like musicians and drama and art. And we were like, these are our people. And I guess I didn't feel that again until I found street art years later. I had like an in between. Like,
Did you find it? Did you find it in Ireland or was it here? How did you find
I
street art?
was always like casually into it. So there's a fella who now lives in my hometown, but he didn't at the time, called ADW. I always saw his stuff when I was on the Lewis, like the train in Dublin. The guy called Mazer, who I love, who's Irish. But also there's this thing in Ireland. I guess it may be in Mexico, it's quite similar, but because we have the murals in Northern Ireland that are kind of the political murals and the peace murals, I think we understand murals as a form of communication in a way that I think that doesn't necessarily translate in every country. So I had this history of knowing what things meant, and we had a marriage equality referendum and a abortion rights referendum in Ireland while I was still there. Mural making was really important as part of the campaigns for both of them. And it just seemed like, yeah, it's just part of your lexicon. You just know what it is. But I never saw it as something that I'd pursue. I was aware of it. I was looking through my books recently, and I have a book on street art in Ireland in my house, and I have no idea where it came from or who gave it to me. But I obviously got that then, long before I knew that I was interested.
Remember purchasing your first can or where your first can came from? Can you remember?
He's very, very specific. So I did a mural making course specifically because I wanted to do a type of art project in a new borough. So I moved to Lewisham, and I was like, okay, I need to know the people in this place to do it. And as I was looking it up, I was like, there's a free mural course. This is amazing. And then by being on that course, there was one spray painting session, workshop thing. But anyway, we did this session with a fella called Lionel Stanhope, and my tutor is a guy called Patricio from Artmongers. And I hated it because I was bad at it in front of everybody else. And I had been decent at painting, but I was really bad at this. And then at the end of the session, they came to me and they went, this is your thing. You need to look into this because you're good at this. And I was like, okay. Like, I didn't expect them that direct, but they're like, just do it. I sweet talked my landlord into letting me paint the wall out the back garden. Myself and my husband bought a pack of cans and just started learning how to do it. But I came up through one collective. So once I got confident enough to be out in public, I spoke with one because they had done an event that I was part of organising, blah, blah, blah.
I think it's beautiful, Shauna. Like, that story's to me lovely Because it's not just like you wanted to do it, you were encouraged along the way, your husband got involved. I mean, it's just lovely because I think it would be so nice if a lot more artists could get that kind of support, because sometimes it's a very lonely endeavor. So it's nice. And then I think also it continued, right? Even though you thought you weren't that good, people around you noticed some potential. Then you went away with that potential, and you also got a little bit of support from your partner, which is a lovely part of the story. Then you've carried on and you found your people in the Warm Collective, and that's such a lovely story. I think when people hear that, Shauna, it gives them a little bit of hope.
Yeah, and I think people often say to me, they get surprised when I say, well, I've only been painting for 4 years. But I'm like, I've been painting with spray paint for 4 years, but I've been painting my whole life. And a lot of people come to One Collective events. There's a lot of illustrators, graphic designers, fine artists. There's actually very few people that come up. We're doing street art anyway or graffiti and then come in. And I guess I know that they do, and I kind of feel it's important to me that even when I am so tired and I'm like panicked to try and do something, if a kid comes up to me and they're like, this is great, I have to give them the time to have a go and have a try. And I'm really encouraging about people. I meet people out and about and they'll talk to me. And I was like, look, these are my details. Follow me. If I say I'm doing an event, come to the event, I will teach you to paint. Because everybody needs someone to put the can in their hand. Because it seems like such an illicit and strange place to be. But yeah, I think it's important.
So wonderful. But I think it's beautiful because through that story, I could hear that you want to give back what you've received, and I think that's lovely. And actually, some kids are so shy until you give them some creativity. Back to your childhood memories. This is a little sneaky question. Do your childhood memories show up in unexpected ways in your work? It's a sneaky one. I said it up front.
Yeah, no, it is. But I guess more so there's a certain mysticism or an otherworldliness that I really identify with my work. And the twinkliness, you look back at yourself and you're like, oh, it's so obvious you do this because you did that. There's something there. That's that like sense of magic and wonder, and kind of, I love the illumination, and it's something about the light bringing you on a path, and things are like, it's like a half remembered dream. And so I guess that's something from my childhood that really I feel comes out, and I feel most at home with myself when I'm doing these pieces. And I don't know, it's not like I've created them. It's like I've dragged them from somewhere that already existed, and I'm just kind of teasing them out of memory, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, I think so. I kind of get that some of the details are reminiscent of something that might have intrigued you as a child. So, you said there that these effects, did you mention like something, illumination? Did you say that word?
Yes, illumination, light illusions sometimes.
Yeah, I think if you were introduced to art as a child, there's always something that remains from that period. And it's like what you said, you might have been new to street art and using cans, but if somebody ever collected and quantified the amount of art you've made, you're really not new. And I think sometimes we need that. We need to try different mediums. We need to go into places that scare us. If you haven't got a steady hand, the only way you're really going to do it is by using watercolor, because it's crazily runny. And I think those kind of things we need as a creative. Sometimes we seek them, sometimes they're put upon us. And one of the things of street art is there is that camaraderie, which I don't have as much in my little fine art world. We do have some. Once you get to know the community, it's really there. So your work feels like public poetry. Do you see your murals as part of a larger conversation about collective identity? I think we've covered that, have we?
Yes. I guess so.
Okay. And you've mentioned being a part of the Warm Collective. How does being a part of the collective shape your practice and your message?
I could never have been here without them. No, I'm good. I would have considered myself to be quite a selfish artist until I worked in that group and realized what the power of the collaboration and the collective was, that you got energy from being around other people, and that you weren't in competition with them. You were there to create something that is greater than the whole, is greater than the sum of the parts, if that makes any sense.
That makes total sense. I love it. It's very succinctly put, shall we say. And I love that honesty. because not everyone is going to mention traits like that they would have probably been, a lot more self-focused. So the next section is called music and visual rhythm. Quick one.
Mm-hmm.
So some of these questions are quite quick. Your murals have rhythm, almost like visual symphonies. Do you paint to music?
I do, but you would not know from the mural. So at the moment, I'm listening to an awful lot of like contemporary, I guess, kind of jazzy punk. Not jazzy as in jazz, but like, so I love Kneecap, which is an Irish Republican group that raps in Irish. I love Soft Play, which is a bit of a piss take British punk band. The Sprints from Ireland, but they're all quite heavy, and I love listening to like rap rock from the thousands. And so I could have like really, really heavy music in my ears and be painting like sweetness and light and like these beautiful flicks. But that's where I get my vibe from. And then if I panic, I listen to like smooth jazz. I just put on like a Spotify playlist and it's just like just white noise this.
Pretty good. So you've got even that very well organized. Okay, so we're going to move into a slightly different section altogether now. And this gets a little bit more playful. We have these are standard Arttox segments, and this is called Toxic or Timeless. I throw out some trends. You tell me if they're toxic or timeless. Okay, so ready?
Is this quick fire?
Quick fire. There's always a bit of quick fire. So just 2 words, toxic or timeless. Gold frames around a...
Okay, it has to be timeless because mine, I had one.
It's all right. It's no right answer. Okay, wings on murals. You know, the ones where they just go and stand in the middle.
Toxic, but I painted what a...
Okay, TikTok art challenges.
So toxic. I don't touch it.
Odd socks in art studios.
Yeah, timeless. You don't have enough time for that. No, I am wearing matching socks right now. I was just checking.
Never matching. I like the idea of expressing myself twice. Boomboxes on murals. Nostalgic or nah?
Nah. Fine.
It's timeless.
Timeless.
Glitter paint in street art.
I love it. I know it's actually bad for the environment, but I'm going to say visually timeless. I'm actually quite trash.
Okay, cool. And this is another slightly different question. How does it feel seeing strangers engage with your murals that are deeply personal to you? One-liner.
Disconcerting, I guess. They have opinions on something and you're like, that's not what that's about, but it's not my business. You can think what you want to think.
Yeah, that's universal, really. So I get that one. Okay, art confessional. This is another segment. What's one thing about the art world that's overrated or misunderstood? Okay, right. So your stick or twist. Your second question is, what do you secretly love or loathe about the art world that might surprise your peers?
What do I love? Yeah, something that I actually love. I guess it's the griminess of the physicality of making murals is so backbreaking, but it's really satisfying when you come home and you feel like a man who's been down the mines and you go, my body is broken, but I did something today. It just feels like you've achieved something, even if you don't like it.
I think that's a wonderful answer. I think one of the things I was a little bit in awe of is when I came to see your mural, I'm not saying it's genderized, but it is quite a man-heavy world out there. And what you were doing on your own, I know people who would be up there on 2s. So I think these little things about like managing the cherry picker, and it's the weight as well, Shauna. Those cans in their masses are not light. So you're kind of doing a workout, and then at one point your stories are say that you got up at 5 o'clock in the morning to get there. You know, these are real things. Yeah. I mean, Shauna, I can't even make a coffee at 5 o'clock in the morning. Do you know what I mean?
I would do it for my mother and for my art, and that is it. Like, there is no other reason why you can get me up before sunrise. But it's like, I was speaking to another artist who did a really big project last year when I was doing that, and she told me she got I said, how long did it take to recover from yours? She said a year, because she got what's it called? A repetitive strain injury in her forearm from the trigger finger. So you do that, and the tendon, like you said, that goes down here, that you gotta pull it like that afterwards. But she said it took a year to completely heal from the amount of.
But you have to do like mural stretches before you start.
Yeah, you sit down on the ground and then you bring your hands back like this, and it lengthens your tendons. My personal trainer taught me how.
You've got a personal trainer for this, yeah? Before you start a mural, you do like a week's workout. A mural's coming, all right, I'm going to lift those, do my finger exercises. So this is a fun one. So describe your art as. If your art was a flavour, scent, or a cocktail, what would it be?
That's tricky. Because the only thing that happened was I went immediately to my favorite cocktail, which is something called an aviation. But I don't think I'm refined enough for that.
No,
It
let's
must be
not. No, let's elevate.
no, but it's okay because what we're gonna do is going to be one of those really cheesy ones that have like all the little flames and doodads coming out of it. Because I do sometimes feel like I'm just like someone stuck a sparkler into a cake and goes enjoy, but it's like with a goth twist.
What we saying here? Sambucas, because they're on fire.
Yeah, do you know what? Black Sambuca on fire. I'll take that.
We'll accept that.
I was not expecting any of these.
This next section's called Show and Tell. One-word reactions to your murals. Ready?
Okay.
The Weaver.
Do I do a reaction?
Yeah, one word.
Massive.
Okay. So a cultural friend.
It could be Deptford Warp and Weft, which was my first fabric mural.
Do you know that you and I have something in common? That I also did Deptford X.
Did you?
Yeah.
When did you do it?
God, years ago, 2019. I did it at the Laban building. You know the Laban?
Oh yeah, nice. I wasn't in Deptford at that stage. I moved during COVID.
It was funny because Mundi and I had the same sort of connection. We'd done a show at the same sort of time that we'd both done. And you and I got that
Really?
too.
Everyone should go to Deptford X, just as a point. That's where all the future heroes come from.
I thought it was lovely at your opening because there was people from everywhere, and I met this lovely. Was she your auntie? This lady who came from
was it
Ireland.
Marguerite? Yeah, so she was one of my friend's mothers, and my friend also lives in the UK. So I haven't seen Marguerite since I've been like 18, maybe 20. But I was so excited. I was like, "Is your mother coming? This is brilliant." Yeah, she was lovely.
I thought it was really lovely, bringing so many different generations together, different cultures together, and then even Dog had a whale of a time. You kind of do something in the art world, and you think it's going to be this, and then it organically becomes something even bigger than you imagine. Right, so we're coming towards the end of our time together, but I'm going to ask you one final question. Actually two. Leave us with a mantra, a bit of advice for young, aspiring artists.
I think it might be a terrible quote by possibly Picasso, and he's awful, but it still works. Is inspiration will find you, but it has to find you working. And I think that's something we forget sometimes, is that you just need to keep making things. You need to keep pushing, and it will happen. But if you do nothing, then it will never happen. So you just got to keep going. It'll find you working.
Love that. Shona, where can folks see your work? What's next? How do they, stay in the loop with what you're creating?
So confusingly, my online presence is Shauna Unshook, and that's SHAUNA.ANSEO, which is Irish, and it does not sound like it's spelled. But if you Google that, that's everywhere for me. I am tomorrow, so a week and a half ago when this goes out, but I'm about to go away for 8 weeks. I'm going to do 5 graffiti festivals back to back, and I've just been added to an extra one in the UK. So keep an eye out for that in July. I might be over in Weston-super-Mare.
Shona, are you telling me you're going on tour?
I am going on.
My goodness, if you ever need, backing singers, you let me know. You're Diana Ross. I could be the Supremes. Oh, I'm so pleased for you.
Yeah, it feels as though I've put the work in and it's starting to pay off slowly. But yeah, I'm doing a series on myths and legends this year, kind of inspired by the process of doing the Weaver. All of the pieces will be inspired by local mythology from where the paintings are going to be. So it's been a lot of work on the back end, but it's going to shine. Yeah. Catch me in September and my face will be dead.
Can you tell, the places you're going, like the countries or anything?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm going to Lisbon, then I'm going to do yard works in Glasgow, which is very exciting. Then I'm going on honeymoon and disappearing. Then I'm going to another hunt house
Congratulations.
in Mexico on the way to, I'm having a bit of a holiday over in the US for a few weeks.
In Mexico?
Mexico City to another, so 2 versions of Juntos. Juntos hacemos más, which means we're stronger together. So the Portuguese version and then the original Mexican.
Wow. Shona is incredible. I think you should make a documentary about this, honestly. It'd be brilliant.
I keep my mural diaries up.
Yeah, for sure. The art comes alive. The art goes global.
And gets no sleep.
That's brilliant. I've been to Mexico City. It's interesting.
Oh, have you?
Yeah, probably been. I think I've been to 56 countries.
Wow. Yeah, I've never been out of Europe, so this is a big
Lisbon
deal
is
for me.
brilliant. You'll love Lisbon. Really
Yeah,
nice. And they've got a really good
hilly
street.
island.
Yeah, they've got a good street art scene. Okay, Shona. Shona, thank you for bringing your whole self to Art Talks today. Your walls might speak volumes, but this conversation, the whole novel.
Thank you for having me on. I'll chat to you soon.
UV as well. And where does that inspiration come from?
I think like when you abstract painting, inspiration comes from your inner world, your inner life. I think always echoing with of what is happening outside, like maybe something that in the news or something, a discussion you had with someone like one day before. So the outside world, of course, is impacting your inner world, and I think that the inspiration also it comes sometimes from stories. A lot of people ask me to do painting based on songs, and I've tried to imagine the story of the songs. And so yeah, sometimes I have like a starting point of inspiration, which is a poem or song or a music, even if it's just instruments. But most of the time, I try to make a total void, and I just want to see what comes on the canvas, because what you paint is reflection of what is in your mind, you know.
For sure, for sure. With abstract, it's unavoidable as well.
Yeah, exactly. It's unavoidable, and I think people see whatever they want to see, and they will imagine their own story, and they see various stuff, and everyone sees something different usually. But the performance is like this immersive, because the audience is immersed into a journey. Sometimes it can be a little overwhelming, but that's the whole point. That's what we want to kind of like trigger a lot of stuff.
Exactly. Artists have been at performances. Degas built his whole entire career based on being there at the ballet. So is there anyone from, the late greats that inspired you within this arena?
Picasso work with Stravinsky. The composer was also like quite amazing. There is a show that he did, I forgot the name, but like we see horse in all this costume and character on stage that are like all painted, and there is like all this crazy horse that arrive all made with wood. Yeah, it's like really this kind of thing really inspire me.
Because I think with Degas,
In events, I take my poems and I improvise a melody based on so I just improvise a melody on stage during open mic and some of this kind of events.
it sounds like improvisation is quite a key component to your creativity. And that in itself is quite brave because, if you look at hyperrealists, improvisation is probably their nemesis, the one thing that they're a little bit cautious of. But it sounds to me it's something you embrace. So how do you get over the fear of the unknown?
Fear of the unknown is actually what scared me the less. Actually, when I don't know so much, because this is what I find more exciting and it's more triggering. There is something, a journey of not knowing is full of imagination. You can imagine a lot of things. It's more open, and I find it extremely it's like exciting to go in a place where you have to create the show on the spot, and you can just fail in front of the audience, and that's not good, but it's part of the adrenaline.
Well, but I think sometimes because you're in it already, maybe you're not giving yourself enough credit. From an outside point of view, is brave. Like the same way I see street artists, I call them to public displays of art. For some of us, it's so intimate and isolated. And then for others of us, it's almost like a communal thing. You're doing it out there live. And it does take a certain amount of bravery.
Yeah, it's true. I don't realize sometimes it's part of something I'm used to do. And like, it's for me normal to do, and I feel like everyone is doing it. But actually, maybe not. And this is inspiring. This is great to hear it from you. And I think, like, for example, sometimes I don't improvise when I record songs, let's say. Actually, like the album I recorded with my friend, we haven't released it yet. But the thing is, like, we came with some written words in a production in a studio, and the producer helped us to shape. I came up with melody. He have quotes when we were like singing words. He takes the best part and he puts it together. And sometimes we improvise some words in the recording studio. Sometimes when you have to perform songs that are already written, it's a bit more difficult for me than to improvise. Somehow it's a bit weird, but the same for theater. Sometimes I have part in plays that are scripted and it's been more difficult for me because you know exactly what will happen, which it should be reassuring for most people. But for me, I find it more scary because you can't make mistake. It has to be exactly like that, and that's what scares me. It's like you know exactly how it's gonna be. And you have to do it exactly like this, and that's what
That's
I'm.
interesting. That's
Yeah,
seriously interesting because actually what you're saying is that improvisation gives you more creative freedom
yeah,
than being scripted, but I guess both parts are all within that art form. So it's great that you're exploring both. I think that's a really lovely example, and it actually is very lovely because it kind of gives people who aren't in the arts an idea of the kind of things that we overcome, challenges and opportunities. So anyway, we're going to be
yeah.
moving on to slightly more funner parts of Arttox. So we
Nice.
have a segment called Toxic or Timeless. It's very quick fire. Are you ready already? Toxic or Timeless. Painting your feelings with spaghetti noodles. Therapeutic genius or soggy nonsense?
A therapeutic genius, I think.
It's what? Is
Yeah.
it toxic or timeless?
Timeless.
Okay, great. NFTs of someone's left foot.
I think toxic.
Artists who only paint their pets with wearing crowns.
Okay, so maybe toxic. It's fun, but yeah.
There's no right or wrong. It's
Okay.
fine.
Yeah.
Interactive art where you just get sprayed with mist. So basically, you go to a place, it's interactive, and they just spray you with mist.
Timeless? Timeless. Yes, let's do it.
Museum shops selling tote bags for $90 that have been designed by a raccoon using a glue gun. High art or hot mess?
Okay, the first one.
Toxic or timeless?
Timeless.
Oh, timeless. You wouldn't mind carrying a tote bag made by a raccoon using a. It's nice. I like you embracing these elements of fashion.
No, I think if it's a real one, yeah, maybe a little bit toxic.
All right, great. Well, there are no right or wrong answers, so perfect. We'll accept whatever you have to say on those very serious matters. We move into something called art confessions. So it's time for some confessions, Aurélie.
Well,
What's
okay.
one art-related habit or creative process you have that others might find surprising or unexpected?
Okay, creative habits or artistic habits, right?
Mm-hmm.
I'm completely obsessed. To finish an artwork for me is like take me. I finish the artwork and 3 months later I can be like still trying to finish it. You know what I mean? And that's really annoys me because I like starting an artwork, but finishing it is a bit of a nightmare for me. So yeah.
I think who was that? Wasn't that Da Vinci? He never finished one.
He was a bit late. Exactly.
Then he went off and burnt half of them as well, suspectedly, because he got a bit angry. Are you at that stage already? Are we going to come round and come to a bonfire outside your studio?
Good idea. But the thing is, like, there is this quote from, I forgot who said that, but basically, an artwork is never finished, it's always abandoned. Yeah, because it's you decide to finish it when you feel, okay, that's the right moment. You want to move on to the next thing some more. So, yeah, it's like that's that feeling of deciding.
And how does it make you feel, like revisiting artwork? Is it something that you feel you do? Because I do it in mine as well. I'll do a few layers and I might forget about it. And then, I don't know, I've kind of lost the love at that moment. So I don't, before I just used to end up destroying them because I'd do them when I hadn't got the love. Have you got anything similar to that kind of journey?
Coming back to it and not feeling it anymore, something like that?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it happened to me like a lot. So I do a lot of painting that I like starting because I have like a strong idea of what I would like to do. And then things get in the way and I just stop it and then I have to come back to it 1 year later. Yeah, it's
What's the longest? What's the one that's taken you the longest?
I think like 2 years maybe, coming back to something 2 years later. And actually there is an artwork I did like maybe 7 years ago that I came back to recently with my dream project. Yeah, I come back to it with another artist. So we repainted on it together. And we gave it a new life, and that's what made the painting come back to life. But otherwise, I don't think I would have been back to it by myself because I felt like, yeah.
But it's nice that you took the time to step away from it, because I think for me, that's a part of the artistic journey, like knowing that, okay, it doesn't need to be, I don't need to do this with any kind of rush, and it's creativity and it can come out when it needs to come out. That took me a long time to learn in my practice. And I've got ones that have taken me probably 8 years. So I kind of
Yeah, exactly. You know that feeling, exactly. But that's beautiful, you know, as well, to a feeling of achievement, a feeling of like you finish an artwork, then you can move to something else, and you have it's also a nice feeling, and you can exhibit it. But it becomes like less emotional and a bit more technical. Yeah, that's the thing.
And how do you feel about exhibiting your work, Aurélie? Is it something you welcome, and has it always been something you welcome, or is it a little bit more nerve-wracking?
Actually, like exhibiting my work is a bit stressful if it's a solo show. I've done like group show, and group show I don't mind, and it's really relaxed, and it's quite nice because you meet other artists and stuff. By yourself having a show and inviting people just to see you, it can be a bit scary, because when I do the performances, they come to see other people as well. There are other people on stage with me. I'm not doing a one-woman show, so you're a bit less scared. You don't feel like, oh, I invite people to just come for me. Having solo show is something I haven't done in 2022, so it's
I think that for me, since I've taken a break from it, I just realized how much work I've put in the past. I agree with you. A group show feels a lot easier. You're a part of something a bit greater, and a solo is endless. And how do you feel about the fact that as artists, we've kind of we're like moved on a long time since the masters in the Renaissance period, because their whole focus was just art. And now we've got social media, we've got to entertain to a certain degree. How do you feel about that?
Yeah, but the integration of all these digital tools and stuff, I think it's good, and there are good and bad. We are bombarded by information all the time, and we are distracted all the time, scrolling and stuff. Sometimes we find opportunities, open call, we meet other artists, and collaboration are created like that, which is the good part of it. But to be honest, like, I really think in the past it was easier to be focused and concentrate. They had less things to worry about, like emails and social media, and the next post to do on Instagram, so that people are so they didn't have to think about doing that. So I think like there was other things to do, of course, but they were focusing more on making work instead of like showing to the audience all the time 24 hours things we are doing, you know.
Exactly. I think there's a lot more interest in the process now, personally. Before, I think it was just make a piece of art, call it what you want, and then that's that. But I think, as you mentioned, we're like an information-driven society, and can art really just exist for art's sake? I think we're not quite sure anymore, because everything needs an explanation. You touched upon open calls. Now, from my own personal, and I think our journeys are similar, I could not understand how much admin I did as an artist, because I think I did less as a marketeer.
Yeah.
So how do you feel about that? Is, the constant cycle of open calls, was that something you were even prepared for when you started your journey?
Actually, like open call, I haven't done it. I haven't applied to so many things so far. If I see something interesting, I apply, but I get frustrated if they don't take me or something. I mean, normal, ego, and also like you feel also that a bit annoyed that you spend 10 hours doing something for nothing, but you learn from everything you do anyway. But I'm just feeling like it's open call. Yeah, it's a good thing to put you out of your comfort zone, and even doing residency or abroad, something I've never done yet, but it could be really interesting for me to do that. When you do residency, I guess you are put in a new context, and you are like with people that challenge you, and that's really, really cool. And I guess for open call, it's pushing you for sometimes think about a subject and write something about a piece of art you need to do about a subject that you wouldn't have thought about.
But when you signed up as an artist, so you came from another career, were you expecting, or did you know? Because, the art, I think being an artist is so different from an office job.
Yeah, very different. I mean, you are self-employed. Somehow you just like you make your day. During the day, you decide what to do. You have to organize yourself, and nobody's telling you what to do. Yeah, it's a kind of that's why being disciplined is really important. And but it's hard sometimes because I think as artists we are led by our emotions all the time. So if there is a day you don't especially feel good for various reasons, you can't really like do anything like because nobody is gonna check what you have done or not. Yeah, it's a little bit challenging.
I think I totally agree with you. So there's this beautiful part of being an artist that you probably don't get from an office job. No one's going to come in and say you can't use that blue there, or why have you used purple? And, that bit there doesn't make sense. And nobody says, can you just, like when you're working in an office job, they'll say, can you just do this? Or can you just do that? You don't get as much, I guess, because you got that free license. Nobody questions your decisions.
Exactly. You have a lot of freedom.
A lot of freedom, but with that freedom is also this self-responsibility. Because as you've said, if you feel unmotivated and you've done nothing for months, it's not like your boss is going to come in knocking on the door.
Yeah, exactly. You have this feeling of this freedom is amazing, but also like it can be really tricky to motivate yourself if you don't feel in the mood. And it's like you have to find stimulation all the time and find the positivity and of not giving up on.
And I think we're in a different position to street artists as fine artists, because I find that street artists have a lot more of solidarity amongst each other. But we as fine artists, we're kind of meet each other in a group show, and then we're back to our sort of solo world, living in whether they're in our homes or in our studios. But the artists, they have this thing, they support each other a bit more. What would you say to that? Is there anything that you would advise any up and coming artist to be aware of?
I mean, like definitely, the artist is a really solo kind of thing. You come back to the studio and you need to concentrate. Some people don't manage to paint anyway when there are people around. The artists work in teams sometimes. That's why collaboration is always amazing. What I would advise, to younger artists, I would say just get inspiration always. Inspire yourself with going to see exhibition, theater, or anything that will give you ideas. Try to always stay in communication with your peers and not feel competition with others, because the competition is all about ego. And I think we should remove the ego. It's okay to share ideas. It's not like that someone's gonna take your whole identity if you say one word about your ideas. And I think it's good to share techniques as well and that kind of stuff. And I think not being scared about if like people don't like what you do. It's fine. Like you do it anyway. It's your voice.
It's brilliant, Aurélie. It's true. You can't please everyone in action. Hi there, Marco Robinson. How are you doing?
Hello, Shahina. How are you?
I'm well, thank you. It's so wonderful having you on our podcast today. Thank you for making the time.
Well, thanks
I know
for having
you're a very busy man.
Thanks for having me.
So, Marco, I know you've done a number of wonderful things, but you've just launched a book series, which I think is a phenomenal, achievement. So you're here to tell us a little bit about the book itself and a little bit about yourself. So, Marco, in 3 sentences, describe yourself.
3 sentences.
3, yeah.
Very kind, sometimes too kind, very driven, want to make a difference, want to serve another human being, and, want to do what I love to do, really. That's it.
Lovely. So that's a very nice way of describing yourself. Normally people talk about their profession, they talk about their roles, they talk about their passion. But you talked about a personal quality to yourself. Tell us a bit more about that. Why did you lead with kindness, Marco?
Because I think it's the one quality that's really lacking in the world. If you look at the world right now, kindness is missing from pretty much every narrative. Kindness kind of left out, all comes last. So for me, because I used to be homeless with my mum, because I was bullied a hell of a lot at school, and I'm still bullied now, I guess, but I can handle it. Kindness is missing, and I think if people put kindness first, the world would be at a completely different place. And one of the major reasons that I created this book series is because I wanted to impact and really help another human being from another human being's perspective, of someone like you, Shaheen, sharing your story of courage unapologetically. What you've been through yourself, that can actually help another person that used to be you. That's why I wanted to do this.
Well, that's what I thought was so remarkable, Marco. I like the way that you made this whole process. That's normally a solo venture. Authors are normally solo people, but you made this so collaborative.
Yeah.
And as an author or a co-author, I have to say I was really taken by this. If the process wasn't collaborative, I'm not sure I would have taken part.
Yeah.
So for me, it's really quite interesting to know how Marco, how did you come up with the idea?
Well, it was just came to me. I was on holiday, and I knew I wanted to do something big, really big, since my Channel 4 TV show that came out. So I asked the universe, what I need to do something to help other people, and the universe came back with a big voice and said, why don't you just do a collaborative book, ask people to share the story of courage, and ask people to write it with you. And literally, as soon as I got the message, I broadcast it on my social media, and literally the response was insane.
So tell us about the response. Tell us about the people who contacted you initially, because you still got people coming on board. Is that right?
Yeah, we've sold out a full series. Now we're doing a series 2 because the demand is insane, and the people that have come on board, they've all got a unique, amazing story about courage, overcoming adversity, loss, or trauma. And these people are from all different backgrounds with all different kinds of stories. For example, getting out of a domestic violent relationship, overcoming cancer, overcoming financial loss, overcoming homelessness, overcoming trauma of losing someone. Many, many stories, but told through a very subjective, unique lens. Because, as you probably know, Sheen, everyone's got a different experience and has different experiences in that story to someone else. It might even be the same theme of domestic violence, but you might have someone that's left someone, might be someone still there might be someone that's handled it completely differently. And that's why it's very important we have a collection of stories that give a complete picture of how people can have tools to navigate where they are to get out of the situation that they desperately want to get out of. Does that make sense?
Yeah, total sense. But as I said, I think it's a really wonderful way of approaching it. And what I also liked about it, Marco, is that you didn't just lead the project, you took part in it yourself. You actually wrote a story. You wrote a different story for each book, is that right?
I wrote a chapter of my life for each book because I think, well, you've had a rich life, Shahina. You've got many chapters, right? So I think we've all got many chapters of our lives that I wanted to share, a kind of whole life story of mine in the series. That's what I wanted to achieve.
I think that's a wonderful thing. I mean, I read your chapter. I have to say, I was very surprised. I know you're a strategic man, but I wouldn't have connected you to a chess player. And that was quite insightful for me. It made me feel like I have a stereotype of what chess players are like. So it kind it sort of made me think about myself.
Sure. And you play chess, Shahina?
And then I've always been very interested in chess, but unfortunately I wasn't taught. Actually, your story and the way you described chess made it so accessible.
Yeah.
So I think it's something I want to go off and explore. And I love that idea,
I love that, yeah.
And I love the fact that chess can be so fast and so slow. You do allude to it in your story, how chess and chess moves have helped you make decisions in life.
Yes.
Is there a particular decision you could share with us?
That's a very interesting question. Sometimes what I will say as a framework, as an entrepreneur, I make decisions really quickly based on information of my experience. Sometimes the reason I make a decision slowly is because I don't have all the information to make a decision quickly. So therefore, I need to make a few more moves to get to that decision, or it might be the wrong decision or the wrong move. I guess that's the way I would say it.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you do sort of relate it back to what you know from chess.
Yeah, because in chess you have opportunities to take a piece very quickly because because your opponent doesn't see it, you see it. Life is about opportunities that you see. So you have to take opportunities in chess as well as life. But sometimes when you've got an opponent that is a great opponent, sometimes those opportunities are not as, I guess, abundant. So you have to really, the great lesson about that is you have to learn to be stronger in chess. So chess is a lifelong game because the more intelligent you are in life and the more experience you have, the better you are as a chess player.
It's definitely something I need to take up then, Marco.
Yeah.
I've got reserves of those intelligences needing to go somewhere. I know you've written books, but how did it feel and what was the process like for you to write that chapter? Because I'm just thinking about my process and I wondered if there's anything in common.
Yeah, I actually hadn't written that before. So for me, it was revisiting a time that I've revisited in my memories and imagination, but I hadn't really a need to go back there until I wrote this particular book series. So for me to go back there, it was actually a joy, because some of those times as a child was so incredibly joyful, well, some were incredibly dark, but now I have the tools to kind of not worry about those things that happened to me because I overcame so much. So for me, it was a joy to go back, and also through the lens of I can help another little boy who's being bullied and give him the tools and the strength, and that's why I wanted to write it.
That's very, very thoughtful. And how many attempts did it take you to write your chapter? Was it a one go, or were you there for a few attempts?
Well, I have a different way of writing. I don't type out on a keyboard. I actually record it on audio, transcribe it, and then.
Wonderful. Is there a reason behind that? Is it because you're more
I guess it's
confident?
because I'm totally ADHD and autistic, so for me it's difficult to write and focus and concentrate for long periods of time. But because I'm a good speaker, relatively good speaker, I get words out of my mouth quicker than it comes out on the keyboard, if that makes sense.
Oh, so you think faster than you write.
I guess so, yeah.
That's lovely.
Yeah.
That's lovely. One of the things for me, Marco, about this project that I was really taken by, because for me, it's the whole thing is unknown. I
Yes.
don't really even
Yeah.
see myself as a writer.
Yeah.
So putting myself in this position of how am I going to navigate this? And all I really knew when we first met is that I've got a good story. But one of the things that was so fantastic is the camaraderie. Being a co-author gives something that I think solo authors don't have,
Yes,
because you go
yes.
in there with a group of 12 or 13 other people on the same mission, but obviously with a very different perhaps approach or story. And it as we spoke about earlier, the people that you have brought together, I mean, it's like that program, isn't it? You know, back in the day when they had that program Heroes. Do you know that program?
Yeah, I
Heroes?
remember that. Yeah, sure. Yeah.
I see our collective as a modern day version of that. How would you
Yes.
describe our collective?
It is a collection of heroes, absolutely, because you probably know that many people that came to this project were very nervous about sharing the story for the first time. Now, that was partly because it was a personal story that, other people were involved in. They were scared to mention people for legal reasons, personal reasons. But also it was because they felt very afraid to share publicly for the first time in case they were judged, right? One of the things that I say to people when they come on board is you've got to be a hell yes to do this. You can't hold back because it goes public. So the people that eventually came through were those people, and that is very heroic to be able to go, I want to do this. It's very courageous to do that,
Yeah, I agree with you. So, I mean, where do you see this going, Marco? Where do you see it in 5 years from now?
It's just started. Literally, it's a month old, right? So I'd never dreamed it would be this big at this time. It was just going to be one book, Sheena. So the way it's going, the growth is literally stratospheric. So it's now turned into a movement. It's not just a book. It's a movement. And it's impacting people all over the world. The live events are getting bigger and bigger. I see people actually having chapters around the world where they bring people into the chapter where they're able to help them with their life, whether it's coaching, career, or something like that. But they're able to talk to people that have been there, and it's a safe environment. I think that's a massive part of the growth.
Definitely.
Yeah.
You could see it when people came to do their readings, Marco. You could see, sometimes you could just feel the apprehension in the beginning and the relief at the end. And for me, it was just so wonderful to be a part of other people's stories in that sort of supportive manner. You and I have both done a lot of things, sort of been quite innovative with our approach to life, I would say. But I don't think I've ever really felt like that, where I've just been in an audience and I've been able to give feedback that's helped someone develop their own story.
Yeah, it's an incredible responsibility and gift, isn't it?
Yeah. And you also see the way people grow. If you think about how our book collective was and how everyone was at the beginning to the interactions we have with each other now, it's just been a process. Like, you planted the seed, you nurtured it for a while, you were watering that plant on your own. And then now you've got like 100 other people that help you pick up the watering can. So
exactly right. And Shahina, I didn't know how to do this. And quite honestly, there are some things I don't know now how to grow it. I'm just going with intuition because no one's kind of done this thing before. It's a brand new, you know what I mean? So as an entrepreneur, I love that creative part, but also it's scary because you don't know where it's going. Do you know what I mean?
And what do you do, Marco, when you have these fears? Because fears are very normal, but what I noticed one thing about you is you have some ability to transmute them, maybe.
Yeah.
You wouldn't have done this if you actually had overthought it. So what do you do with fear?
I straight away lean into courage, straight away. So what that looks like in terms of reality is I go for a run, I go into the country, go into nature, I go and talk a different narrative in my head to myself. I say, listen, stop feeling this way. Fear never works, go into courage. That's the default answer.
It's a good one. And just 2 more questions, Marco. So have your friends and family read your chapter?
Yes. A lot of them knew the first one of the spy story, so that's okay. Obviously, they're excited, proud, all that kind of stuff. Shocked, I guess we would say. You know, when your story comes out for the first time and your family sees it, they go, "Oh, I didn't know that." You know.
Yeah, definitely. And what's one thing you want to say to people that are in the beginning of sharing their story? What's the advice?
The advice is really be true to yourself and authentically real about your story. Understand the lesson you've learned from it before you share it. Because when you share it, you want to help another human being, right? When you share it, you want to relate a lesson that you've learned from your own chapter. And that's when you become a very powerful voice, and that's when you have an impact. That's when you have a ripple effect. And that's the most fulfilling thing that you could ever do in your life, because when you share your story, someone listens to it and reads it and they go, oh my God, I want to go in a completely different direction now. Thank you so much for sharing that. That is the most fulfilling thing you can do in your life. I think you'd agree with that.
Yeah, definitely. I always feel wonderful when somebody's actually learned something from my experience. It makes the experience worthwhile.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
if I've gone through something difficult and I've shared that story and it's prevented someone, or it's changed the direction, or it's made it a little bit easier for someone else to cope.
Yeah.
It's a wonderful feeling.
Yeah.
Right, so Marco, I'm going to give you a couple of minutes to talk freestyle. Say whatever you like.
Well, I've enjoyed the interviews, the great questions. I've never been asked those questions like that, so well done on the questions. It takes a lot of
Thank you.
intelligence and courage to ask those questions. So, and also, it's different because the rest of the podcasts are pretty boring, right?
We try to avoid that here.
Yeah.
Okay, so you say thank you when I freestyle you. So how about this question? Flip the mic. So it's a standard part of my podcast where I say to a guest, they can ask me anything they want. But you can ask me a question, anything you like.
So, why did you decide to share your story in this book series?
There was a number of reasons why I decided to share my story in this book series. Firstly, because I think there's so many people out there that have a film, a book, a poem, a piece of art, something within them that just comes as an organic result of the life they've led. So I've got 2 mottos in life. One is, if my life was a brand and it had a motto, it would be there's always a story. And I've survived a lot of my life thinking that I'm living in a Netflix series. So I thought, okay, it's time to share that. I don't really think, Marco, if I hadn't gone through this personal challenge that I did last year, I would have ever thought about writing my book before I was 65. So meeting you brought that whole thing years and decades ahead.
Right.
I still would have been nervous, Marco, if it wasn't for the other 13 people that we wrote this with. Because it just made me realize that I'm not the only one. There's all these other really wonderful people all around the world, and they've struggled just the same. So they were the first 2 reasons. And the third reason is because I realized that a lot of my life, from people who know me very well or people who just met me, are based on their assumptions of what I tell them. So I was very fortunate to live in a lovely little town and grow up in a very small town in Surrey. But it's quite affluent. The people just believed that I
That you're
went
rich.
to private school and
Yeah.
I lived in this and I quite liked that belief for a while. It got me quite far. But sometimes you just got to hit your reality, because the truth is, had I not had the upbringing that I had I not had the shock, would I have half the skills that I have now? Probably not. So they were the reasons. And the real reason is because I think as human beings, we can inspire each other, whether we know each other in depth or not.
Absolutely.
So I'm hoping, just like you said, some person somewhere will read your story and it'll give them hope. And fundamentally, that's what I'm trying to do. You do it with overcoming bullying via chess. I do it with overcoming bullying via art.
Yeah.
But, there's a synergy. And there are lots of people out there looking for that hope. So that's the reason. All right,
Sure,
let's
great
end the
answer.
interview on something really exciting, Marco. Okay? What does this sound mean to you? That's just the hardback copy of our book.
Nice. Great sound.
Yeah, you love it?
Very good, Shahina.
Huge thank you to Shauna Blanchfield, Aurélie for Marco Robinsons for sharing their stories. From cherry pickers to theatre stages, their work reminds us that creativity doesn't just hang on gallery walls. It climbs, moves and breathes with us. This was part 2 of PDA, Public Display of Art. Arttox will be back with a new episode on July 7th at 5 p.m, so hit follow and stay with us for the rest of the journey. We're a small but mighty crew, currently boasting a whopping 4 subscribers on YouTube, every one of them cherished. We've poured months of love into building this channel. If you like what you heard, show us some love back. Well, please show us some love back. Follow, share, or tag us on socials at Arttox Crew. It really helps us. It lets us know you're out there cheering us on and cheering for the artists we spotlight. Thank you again for listening, and until next time, stay creative, and we look forward to welcoming you back on the 7th of July. Until then, cheers!